Before concluding, I will touch upon another aspect of civilizational state, which is directly related to the future of Hong Kong. If one looks at the Eurasian continent, one sees easily many what I call interfaces between civilization on this vast continent, stretching from Kiev to Istanbul, to Singapore, to Hong Kong, and to Shanghai. These metropolises are in many ways also civilizational, in the sense that they constitute interactive and transaction nodes between East and West, between civilizations, between diverse cultures, and their checkered history, the ups and downs they experienced, shows that these transaction nodes operate either as a bridge between civilizations, between East and West, between diverse cultures, or as a contested outpost driven by clash of civilization and cultures, with one attempting to domineering over the other. Hong Kong should, of course, be a bridge, not contested outpost between civilizations. This also reminds me of the tragic fate of Ukraine today. Back in 2014, when the West supported color revolution sweeping Kiev, with the US government insisting that Ukraine had a full sovereign right to join NATO, Henry Kissinger, former US Secretary of State, counseled Kiev that if Ukraine is to survive and thrive, it should not join NATO, and that it must not be either side's outpost against the other. Rather, it should function as a bridge between them. In retrospect, I think Kissinger's counsel is more sensible for America's own interest, for European interest, and for Ukrainian interest. Indeed, history and geography dictate in many ways the fate of interactive nodes between civilizations. From Chinese point of view, you may wish to disagree. The National Security Law for Hong Kong, promulgated by the Chinese National People's Congress in 2020, is a decisive step to have saved Hong Kong from the tragic fate of Kiev. By the way, it's also reported at the high time of Hong Kong crisis in 2019, the Ukrainian neo-Nazi Azov Battalion sent its veterans to Hong Kong as expression of solidarity. I should be very candid here. In the eyes of the most Chinese, I repeat, the most Chinese, 90% if not more, the West has already made a mess of Iraq, made a mess of Afghanistan, made a mess of Libya, made a mess of Syria, and now Ukraine. So millions of lives lost, tens of millions homeless. China will never allow these tragedies to happen in Hong Kong or in Xinjiang or elsewhere in China. Only a civilizational state can allow for one country, two systems. But this diversity in harmony is based on mutual respect. If one side tries to take down the other side through an act of color revolution, this act will have to be brought to justice according to law. In the context of civilizational politics, the West has for too long and is still pursuing a strategy of divide and rule since the colonial times. In contrast, China pursues and prefers just the opposite, what I call unite and prosper, which China believes represents the best interests of most peoples. And not long ago, I met an old friend, former Pakistani ambassador to China. He told me that he toured the United States 2 years ago to give lectures on China. He was constantly asked a question, what's the future of China? And his reply was always very simple. His reply was, China is the future. I share his view. And the ideas I have outlined just now from a civilizational state perspective, which you may agree or disagree, such as meritocracy, good governance, prioritizing people's livelihood, balance of Ming-Yi and Ming-Xin, balance of Dao and Shu, and interface between civilizations are all very crucial for China's successful rise over the past decades, and for Hong Kong's prosperity, I think, as well. So at this critical moment of history, I hope these ideas will be relevant and even inspiring to many others, including those in the West, including those among the audience, as well as those in Hong Kong, when reflecting on this future of democracy and future of Hong Kong. Indeed, China has learned so much from the West and will continue to do so for its own benefit. We are from a culture of learning from others. It may be time now for the West. I would use Deng Xiaoping's famous phrase, to emancipate the mind, to learn more about or even from some of the Chinese approaches and Chinese ideas, however extraneous they may appear, for their own benefit. This is not only to avoid a possible collision between the West and this hugely important nation, a civilization by itself, but also to enrich the world's collective wisdom in tackling all the challenges and crises facing mankind.